Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and something I want to talk with everyone about today is something that really cracks me up, and it's something that's come up several times in videos I've done not that long ago. Like when I discussed one famous female bodybuilder and her very obvious anabolic use, as well as the drug testing stuff that happened with the UFC recently that I discussed in a video. People always come back with these reactions of, oh man, I wanted to believe it was really just hard work, or this person can't be using, because if you just saw how hard they train, they work so hard that clearly it's just hard work, there's probably no drugs involved. It's always this idea that people associate natural with hard work, and people who are using anabolic drugs or performance enhancing drugs with being lazy. And the reality is that whole mindset is not only a lie, it's an intentional lie that was created by, well, I love America. My government built a propaganda machine back during the Cold War and then popularized it in popular media of the idea that anabolics were for the lazy, even though they had developed and were requiring our Olympic athletes to use them. This has all come to light in later years after the fact that they were making our athletes use anabolics, and the Russians were also. That we use this as a propaganda machine, and this propaganda machine that we put in place to enforce that idea was so powerful and so effective that it spread everywhere. But the thing is, nothing could be further from the truth, and it's really funny when people make these statements like, this person trains so hard that it's just hard work. It can't be drugs. They're not lazy. Why are you calling them lazy? Well, the reality is, what do anabolic steroids do? Why would any athlete take them? No, seriously, what do they do? Well, they increase aggression. They increase endurance, and they speed up recovery. Those are the reasons that they let people get bigger and stronger, right? These are well understood. I don't think anyone out there who knows anything about the biology of them disagrees that they don't do those three things. They're very good at doing those three things. That's why they're considered to be cheating, because they work. Well, what does that mean to an athlete? Well, that means if they're more aggressive when they train, that means they can train harder, and they probably will train a little harder. They increase endurance, particularly even strength endurance, which means if a person is training really hard, they can do it longer before they run out of energy. Number 3, if they speed up recovery, that means if you train really hard, you recover from it faster, which means you can go back and do it again sooner with that increased aggression again and the increased endurance, so that you can keep repeating the cycle of training harder, doing it for longer, and doing it more often. So the reality is, it isn't biologically possible for a person not on these drugs to train anywhere near as hard as they can train on the drugs. So when you say that someone trains really hard and their work ethic just seems way beyond normal, that in and of itself is almost the equivalent of accusing them of using drugs. That is not used as a sign of innocence that they're not using them. That means that they probably are. And it's biologically undeniable when we look at those facts to say that the majority of the hardest training athletes in the world are probably on drugs, and the people who are on drugs have the ability to train harder than the people who aren't. So therefore, it holds to reason that the hardest training athletes in the world are using drugs to allow themselves to train harder and recover from it faster so they can do it again sooner. They're taking the drugs so that they can train harder. So the reality is, while many people use them as a shortcut and are lazy about it, most serious athletes who are using them so that they can train harder than they were ever able to do without these performance enhancing and recovery enhancing drugs. So this idea that natural is equated with harder work, and the people who are on drugs that let them recover faster and train harder are not working harder is really silly when you think about it biologically. And the reality is, all of the hardest training athletes on earth are on a lot of drugs. So never ever buy that excuse, well, this person trains really hard, so they must not be on drugs. If anything, that is an accusation of being on drugs. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.